Twice Baked Cheese Souffles. Now, these are perfect to start off a fancy dinner party. While every souffle needs a base, the way they're made is quite different. For a cheese souffle, you need to actually make a bechamel sauce. To do this, you start with the roux. I have equal parts butter and flour, 3 tablespoons of each. I've got my pot over medium heat, and I stir it with a wooden spoon. The butter melts, and essentially the flour cooks in the butter. It activates the thickening power, but also lends a really nice flavor to the sauce. Sometimes you might hear of bechamel sauce just simply called a white sauce. I think everybody learns how to make it at one point. It's how you make a cheese sauce. I think I learned to make ham and peas on toast with it. Got me through some rough days in university. I have a cup of milk on hand. I'll whisk in a little bit to smooth out the roux, and then let it warm up and whisk in the rest. Immediately, you'll see it thicken up. Finish adding that last bit of milk. While I'm letting this warm right up, let me add just a touch of flavor, a pinch of ground nutmeg. And now that this has thickened and started bubbling, I'm going to add a little of this to 5 egg yolks. So this is a rich souffle. I didn't need to use the egg yolks in my chocolate souffles, but I do add them here. I'll add this back to my pot. This, I find, benefits from the richness. And now, I'll scrape this into a bowl because I want to cool it down. To help this base cool down, I add a bit of whipping cream. Half a cup of whipping cream. Just pour that right in. That should cool down the base to room temperature. And now it's time for the whites. I used 5 yolks in my base, so I have 5 whites in my mixer, and I want to mix them on high speed until they reach a soft peak. There we go. Before I fold that into my base, I can add the cheese. 2 cups of coarsely grated Gruyere. I love the intensity of a nice Swiss cheese. I've got 3 tablespoons of chives, a nice little pop of color. So now it's time for the egg whites. Same technique, I'll fold in 1/3 and then the remaining 2/3. That first third always deflates, but it lightens up that base. There we go. Now, time for my ramekins. I'm applying the same trick here, chilling my ramekins for the first bake of the recipe. Now, of course, it's a savory souffle, so I'm not going to butter and line the ramekins with sugar. Instead, I use Parmesan cheese. These are ready for their first bake. I've preheated the oven to 350, so not as hot as those chocolate souffles, and they take about 30 minutes. Oh, they turn so golden on the outside, but that's only the first bake. Oh, these are gorgeous! And all I can smell, cheese. Now be prepared. When you pull cheese souffles out of the oven, they immediately start falling. It's just what they do. But we get to bake them twice. So what I'm going to do to get them ready is turn them out of their ramekins so they can cool. Oh, they smell so good. I'm just gonna loosen it around the edges. So out it goes. And then you give it a little flip so you have the nice pretty side upright. And I'll keep pulling these out of the ramekins. And then you know what I think would be nice? pepper sauce to serve with it. I start with just a little bit of olive oil in my pan, and I'll cook out a bit of onion. I do this on medium heat. Now that my onions have softened a little bit, I add a single large red pepper that's been diced up. And for a little flavoring, I have a sprig of fresh thyme and fresh oregano. Oh, it smells good. And I just add a bit of water, just enough to cover the vegetables. And I just simmer this for a couple of minutes until the peppers are tender. Now that my peppers are tender, I pull out the thyme and oregano, and I puree the sauce. I'll give it a puree. There we go. And I want to strain the sauce. Now to get my soufflés ready for their second baking. First thing I like to do is brush the tops of them with just a touch of cream. But what this does is it soaks through the top and it really softens the center. And I have a little remaining Gruyere cheese, and I just sprinkle that on top. And the soufflés are ready for the oven. I've preheated it to 400, so really hot, and they only take 8 to 10 minutes. You want to make sure the cheese is melted and nice and bubbling. I think melted cheese is one of my favorite things. I have a little green salad because sometimes I serve this as a first course at dinner or as a main course at brunch. A little spoonful of the pepper sauce on the plate. Lift one. And there it is. Look at all that melted cheese. And of course, you want to serve this as soon as it's plated. Mmm.